The protests in Iran, what is your take? Well, look, there are issues in Iran with human rights, obviously, right? The Iranians are the first to tell you that. But this wave of protest, this is about destabilizing Iran. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, the thing that happened is that in Iran, you have a lot of younger people. The majority of the country is under the age of 35, born since the Islamic Revolution, born since the Iraq-Iran War, and when Rouhani was elected, you'll remember, Ahmadinejad was before Rouhani, and Ahmadinejad was a hardliner. He criticized capitalism in his speeches. He was a hardliner, right? He wasn't a cleric, though, but he was a hardliner. And after Ahmadinejad came Rouhani, and Rouhani was very much a moderate. And he said, Ahmadinejad's an extremist. He's too extreme. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to negotiate with the United States. I'm going to make an Iran nuclear deal negotiation with America. I'm going to fix your economy. So they did it. The P5+1 nuclear conclusion. They signed the Iran nuclear deal. Iran gave up almost all of its peaceful nuclear energy program in exchange for the USA acknowledging in writing that they do have the right to peaceful nuclear energy, and lifting some sanctions on Iran. Immediately after that nuclear deal, the USA put more sanctions on Iran. And then Donald Trump came in and he pulled the United States out of the deal, and he reenacted all the sanctions that came from that deal. All the U.S. sanctions from the deal were put on by the United States. And then Trump murdered Qasem Soleimani, the national hero of Iran. And so as a result, the Iranian economy did not improve. Iran suffered national humiliation from the United States. And the moderates, the reformists, were completely humiliated. The moderates in Iranian politics were, completely debunked. Everything they promised didn't work out. So as a result of that, a lot of the younger people in the Iranian political system who had voted for the moderates, for the reformists, they didn't vote. They stayed out of the political process. They stayed home. A new president is in. He's a hardliner. He's from the hardliner but religious camp, right? Ahmadinejad was not a cleric. The new president certainly is a cleric. He's somebody with a history in the Islamic Revolution, etc. So the new president of Iran is a hardliner, and that's the situation. So now the United States is thinking, okay, what do we do to stir up issues in Iran? Well, there are a lot of wealthy young people in Tehran who are very wealthy, and they watch American movies, and they wear jeans. I've been to northern Tehran. I've seen it. There's a lot of wealthy young Iranians who are enamored with America, and they have one of these. And even though there's internet blocks, they have one of these, and they're constantly getting indoctrination from the phone and such. They are in awe of the United States. They think the United States is an amazing, happy, fun land of freedom and opportunity and endless iPods and iPhones and all of that. And so because of that, there are a lot of young Iranians that are enamored with that. And the incident that sparked things was a tragic incident. This woman collapsed in a police department. Now, she wasn't beaten up or anything. She was there because she had violated their rules. And so she was going to a class that she was required to attend about why it's important to wear a headscarf, why it's important to comply with the Islamic clothing. She was at the class and she passed out. Now, she wasn't beaten, right? She wasn't, she just passed out, right? But then U.S. media made this a crazy thing, and they're spreading fake news. They claimed today, it was all over Twitter, that the Iranian parliament had just sentenced 14,000 young people to death. It was a lie. It was just a big, fat lie. Google it. It's fake news. It's just a lie. And it was all over social media. Iran is going to execute 14,000 young people for protesting. Google it. Bullshit. Didn't happen. Just made up. Just fake news. And all kinds of mainstream people tweeted this out. Oh my God, Iran is going to execute 14,000 people. Didn't happen. Just pure bullshit, right? Iran is trying to bring stability to the country. They have their Islamic system. They do have their restrictions, and that the USA is trying to destabilize Iran. And yeah, Iran needs reform. And yeah, but this isn't about justice and reform. This isn't about making Iran a better country. This is about destabilizing Iran because it's an ally of Russia and an ally of Venezuela and an ally of Cuba. And also, the U.S. government is realizing that it's going to need more oil from Iran. And so in order to, the Biden camp is trying to negotiate. You know, the John Bolton crowd, they went in with Biden. They turned on Trump, they went in with Biden, but they hate Iran. And they really like that Trump ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. They were against the Iran nuclear deal the Obama administration did. Now Biden is trying to, lift restrictions and buy more Iranian oil. Same with Venezuela. And so he has to give a bone to the neocon folks that have his back, that he got them into his camp against Trump. So it appears that he's like, okay, I'll buy their oil, but I'll let you stir up a color revolution. I'll let you stir up a lot of unrest. And so there's unrest. Now, it's worth pointing out that the gap between the rich and poor in Iran is the highest it's been since the Islamic Revolution. And that in Iran, there is a new level of inequality, right? That there is a market sector that is, in some cases, has been blatantly out of control. There's been, private bankers ripping people off and such. And so there is a feeling on a part of a lot of the population that they need to go back to the anti-capitalist principles of the Islamic Revolution. There is a feeling on the part of a lot of the population that they need to get back to some of the anti-capitalism of the revolution, and that there's a cynicism. Some people feel like the gap between the rich and poor, the inequality, is pointing to the Islamic principles of the revolution not being sincere, and that's a concern. Waco, the divisions were multi-faith, very pro-Iran. Steve Schneider saved my life after the show to go on my YouTube listening to Steve talk. I have no idea what you're saying there, Enoch. That message does not make any sense to me. I don't know who Steve Schneider is, but, good luck to you. And, I mean, it's very clear this is about, stirring up instability inside of Iran, using the contradictions in the country. I mean, there is anger at the growing gap between the rich and poor, and there are contradictions. I mean, look, the Islamic traditional way of viewing things and the Western media that a lot of Iranian young people are getting on their phones, there's a contradiction there. They're not going to see eye to eye on such things. So there you go. And Iran has to work that out, right? That they are very, very, very traditional and conservative in Iran. Their legal system is very Islamic and traditional and conservative. Meanwhile, the outside world, with modern information, is able to get into Iran. A lot of Iranian young people don't buy into it. So there's going to need to be an adjustment, probably to some degree or other, in Iran. And the fact that there seems to be a generation gap to some degree, maybe playing into this. But overall, this is just the United States wanting to overturn the Islamic Revolution. There are a lot of Iranian young people who love the Islamic Revolution, who adhere to Islam, who believe in the supreme leader. I mean, I've one of the few Americans who's actually been in the same room as the supreme leader. So there you go. All right. Please explain how Iran's economy works. All right, we'll do that. First things you have to know about Iran and their economy is that the biggest economic entity in Iran is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And that is the special military organization that is accountable only to the supreme leader. They are not accountable to the elected government. They are accounted only to the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, Khamenei. They are the biggest economic entity in the country. They own factories. They build bridges, they build infrastructure, they have housing developments. They are the biggest entity in the Iranian economy. They are technically, they're a military organization, right? But they are the biggest part of the Iranian economy. On top of that, Iran has a number of state-run industries, right? They have a state-run oil industry that's nationalized. That's one of the main sources of revenue is their oil. They have car manufacturing in Iran that is technically private, but it's facilitated by the state. They have steel manufacturing in Iran that is, again, technically private, but facilitated by the state. They have a lot of companies in Iran that are dependent on government subsidies that carry out their activities in coordination with the overall state central plan. So you have that, right? But you do have a very big private sector in Iran, but it is subordinated to the state sector, the state-run industries, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the state-run oil, the state-run electricity, I mean, everything that matters in Iran, like the commanding heights of economic power, are state-run. The rate of state ownership in Iran is actually much higher than the rate of state ownership in China, for example. A huge amount of state ownership. And there's almost guaranteed employment in Iran. Now, it's not necessarily a good job, but if you need a job, there's a government office, you go to it and they give you a job. It's not a good job, but you can, they make sure that everyone who wants to be employed can be employed. They provide education, free university education. And in fact, there's a majority of women in Iranian education right now. The majority of people in university in Iran are female. I mean, Iran's economy heavily state controlled, a huge amount of central planning, but there's a market sector. I mean, it's not a communist country. They don't preach Marxism. They make very clear their system. They call it not capitalism but Islam. They have these things in local neighborhoods that are called Basij councils, that are like committees to carry out revolutionary goals. They have the supreme leader, who is the head of the continuing Islamic revolution, right? I mean, he's the representative of the official representative of the revolution, and he gives ideological guidance, but he can draw red lines and prevent Iran from doing things that stray from the Islamic principles, right? The elected government handles most things, but then the supreme leader can draw certain red lines and prevent things from going differently. I mean, Iran is a little bit of it's an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, revolutionary country, and they support the Palestinians, and they're very close to Venezuela. Venezuela and Iran just had like a joint economic meeting. I mean, Venezuela and Iran are very, very closely tied at this point, economically speaking. Iran is an important anti-imperialist country, and it's they call it not capitalism but Islam. There are multiple political parties in Iran and elections. However, the parties and elections are guided by the Guardian Council. So there you go. There you go. I mean, I don't know what to say about it. Yeah, someone says free Alex Saab. Well, Alex Saab was, is a political prisoner. He was somebody who was coordinating Venezuela's trade with Iran, and he remains being held in the United States. The USA is trying to prevent Iran and Venezuela from having good relations. Alex Saab remains locked up. A Venezuelan diplomat who should have diplomatic immunity. So there you go.